Right now on Morning News Now, trouble in the tropics. Less than 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene slammed into Florida's Gulf Coast, another major hurricane taking aim at the Sunshine State. Many residents are already preparing for the worst. And as Hurricane Milton picks up steam, officials are urging people in the state's hard-hit Gulf Coast to evacuate. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman standing by with the latest on the timing and the track. Today marks 1 year since the deadly October 7th terror attack on Israel by Hamas that shocked and horrified the world. Now, 1 year later, hopes for peace are fading following the near continuous bombardment of Gaza that local officials says has claimed more than 40,000 lives, now spiraling into a broader conflict. The somber anniversary is being marked with fears of an all-out war in the Middle East. Also this morning, swing state split screen. Vice President Harris and former President Trump on a campaign media blitz. Their message for voters and the new threat to Planned Parenthood with less than 1 month to go until Election Day. And more hospitals are now being hit by high-tech cyber attacks. How they're preparing and what it could mean for your next visit. Good morning. I'm Christine Romans in for Joe and Savannah this morning. We start this hour in Florida, where 51 counties are under states of emergency ahead of Hurricane Milton. The storm, which is now a Category 2, packing sustained winds of 100 miles an hour, expected to make landfall near the Tampa Bay metro area on Wednesday as a Category 3. It comes less than 2 weeks after the state was ravaged by Hurricane Helene. Officials are scrambling to get debris cleared as fast as possible to help people brace for another major storm. Several schools closed this week, and evacuation orders are underway across multiple counties as residents race to stock up on gas and supplies. Some people saying they don't want to be caught off guard again.
We want to be safe and prepared this time with the sandbags. Like I said, we never knew that the surge was going to be so high, and it could be high again.
I usually got 20 or 30 gallons in my shed. I'm always prepared for because you never know.
NBC correspondent Jesse Kirsch is live in Sarasota, Florida, which is currently in the path of Hurricane Milton. Jesse, good morning. What are things like there now, and how are people preparing for this?
Yeah, hey, good morning, Christine. It's calm right now, and it's clear, which is something that's a bit of a rarity over the last 24 hours. We've already been seeing rain here. It's not because of Milton yet. It's a different weather system, but it has already been raining, and that is, not making it easier for people to get prepared. That also is something that can increase the flood potential when we do get Milton itself in the next couple days. I can tell you that we've already seen some resources running thin. Bottled water is disappearing off of store shelves. I drove around to multiple stores yesterday trying to find gas cans, and I was not able to, whether that's because they haven't been restocked from Helene or because people have already grabbed them ahead of Milton is not clear. But either way, that underscores the situation we're in. People are going through the motions again for the second time in less than 2 weeks on getting ready for one of these things. And you can see there, it is a physically exhausting process, not to mention, I'm sure, the mental strain for people who might be trying to get their head around the damage from this last storm and now wondering if they're going to get it even worse this time.
Yeah, I mean, Sarasota is still recovering from Hurricane Helene less than 2 weeks ago. So they're recovering from one and preparing for another at the same time, a unique experience.
Yeah, no question. And I want to emphasize a couple things here, right? If you had something like roof damage, of course, you're probably worried about rain getting in the way that you may not have been during the last storm. So there are any kinds of vulnerabilities to properties that we haven't been able to see firsthand yet because we just got to town. But, the kinds of things I'll be looking for. But I think the biggest thing in our minds right now is all of the debris that is out there. I saw a small pile of debris, unclear if it was just trash that was being thrown away, but presumably, 10 days or so after a hurricane, it might be stuff that people had pulled to the sidewalk from flooding inside a property. All of that becomes flying projectiles in a hurricane. And I was in the eye wall for Hurricane Helene in Perry, Florida, and there was stuff flying around in that. So if you bring 100-mile-per-hour winds back into play, and this time you've got that much more loose stuff flying around, right? Floorboards that might be ripped up, drywall, tarps, furniture, things that people have had to throw away because it has been destroyed by a hurricane. All of that could potentially be in the air, and I think that we'll be keeping an eye on how the wind might be more of a factor in terms of risk to life than it typically is, because what we're usually most worried about is the storm surge in a hurricane. But I think there's just that much more stuff that could be flying around in the air, and that's something that we're going to be keeping an eye on.
Sounds so dangerous. What are you hearing from officials right now, Jesse?
The debris is one of the things. State officials have said it's a 24-hour operation. They even have the Florida National Guard involved in getting debris cleaned up. So that is something that they are clearly worried about. We know officials have also got resources and personnel pre-staged already. That's something that often goes on in a hurricane situation. And we also know that some mandatory evacuations in Florida along the Gulf Coast have already been issued. So we're days out, and already people are being told to pack up and leave town with something expected. And I do want to stress one more thing, Christine. You know, this is far from our first hurricane this season, especially in this area of Florida. But a lot of what we've been dealing with has been to the north of where we are right now. And of course, any loss of life is tragic, but we're talking about larger population centers that could be taking a more direct hit this time. And so that is also something, you know, to be keeping an eye on. I'm sure something that's top of mind for officials is just that much more of an amplified risk to large population centers than we've seen with the earlier storms this season. But again, even those have been deadly, and all of them are heartbreaking for people along this stretch of Florida's coast. And we, you know, are bracing for yet another one here.
Bracing. All right, Jesse, thank you so much. Later this hour, we'll talk to an official in Pinellas County, Florida, about how Tampa and other cities are preparing for Hurricane Milton, as many people there are still recovering from Hurricane Helene, which slammed the area less than 2 weeks ago as a Category 4. All right, let's bring in NBC meteorologist Michelle Grossman for the latest on Milton's path as it appears to be headed straight for Florida's Gulf Coast. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, Christine. Such a unique path. We do not see this path very often, and this is going to be a high-impact storm. We are talking about 15 inches of rain in some spots, life-threatening storm surge, certainly flooding. I like how Jesse mentioned that debris already scattered across the grounds, and the potential of 100-mile-per-hour winds. So we are going to be talking about this for days to come. We're about 60 hours away from landfall, so this is when you need to take the warning seriously. The latest on this, we're already up to a Category 3 storm. This just came in. I actually didn't see this until right now, so it must have just popped in. Winds at 120 miles per hour. Like all season long, these storms continue to overachieve. We are looking at overproducing storms in terms of rainfall, in terms of storm surge, in terms of winds, and this will be another storm that we're going to see that. So we're looking at winds at 120 miles per hour. It's moving to the southeast at 8 miles per hour, and it's going to continue to move across the Gulf. Very warm, bath-like at this time, and that's just the fuel that it needs. Now we're looking at that flood threat already because we're seeing the rain falling already on this Monday. We saw it over the weekend. This is a little different. We have a frontal boundary that's kind of draped across the area. We're seeing waves of moisture kind of tapping into that tropical moisture. So we're already wet, and then we're going to see Tuesday and Wednesday, those rain chances only increasing. Because of that, we have 15 million people impacted by flood watches, not, surprising, all along Florida. And we're going to continue to see these alerts kind of expand as we go throughout the next couple of days. So let's talk about today, tomorrow, and then what we expect for Wednesday. Today, we're going to start to see, and we are seeing those outer bands kind of skirting across the Yucatan Peninsula. And then it's going to move further into the Gulf. We're going to see that rain increasing in Florida. We're seeing that rain right now. We're going to see that on Tuesday as well. And then Wednesday, really seeing that rain falling. Tomorrow, Milton will continue to strengthen as it crosses that really warm Gulf. The winds will increase, the storm surge will increase, and the rain will increase. Now, keep in mind, I know we say this time and time again, but it's so important. The biggest cause of death when it comes to a tropical system is the storm surge. It's the water. It's the wall of water that pushes on shore. So that's where you see people drowning, and that's where you see the devastation. Now, as we go throughout Wednesday, we're going to see it really strengthen. The only good news is it's a smaller in size storm in terms of comparison to Helene, but still a really powerful one. So this is Wednesday. We're expecting landfall later Wednesday, maybe now overnight into Thursday. Things are starting to slow down a bit because we are still 60 hours away. So we're going to see some changes. We're going to see some changes of the track as well. So that storm will cross the peninsula by later on in the evening. It looks like the bullseye right now is central Gulf Coast. Let's look at that path. Notice as we go throughout time here, we're going to see it strengthen to a Category 4 storm by Tuesday morning, by tomorrow morning, and then we're going to see it go throughout the Gulf here, and it probably will make impacts around a Category 3, could be a Category 4. Either way, we're looking at a major hurricane as it makes landfall. And this is where we're seeing this line. Now, you want to pay attention to the cone, but here's the line just south of Tampa, north of Fort Myers, and something that we're going to watch very, very closely. We don't often see a landfall there. Tropical alerts have already been posted. These were posted around 5 o'clock this morning, and we're looking at hurricane watches. That is in the pink here for places like Tampa, also Fort Myers. Looking at a tropical storm watch where you see the yellow, Tallahassee, also down to Key West. So this is large in location, real estate, because we're going to see those winds really blowing all throughout the state of Florida, and also those rains, the rain falling, and also the storm surge. Flooding rains, we're going to see up to 15 inches in some spots. So generally 5 to 10. We're going to see flash flooding, river flooding as we go throughout time here. And Jesse kind of alluded to this. We're looking at winds possibly up to 100 miles per hour. That's dangerous in itself. We're going to bring down trees. The ground is so wet already. We're going to see power outages. But we have so much debris still from the last storm that we're going to see that blowing around. You know, typically we say kind of bring everything in if you can. It's going to be hard to really clean up as we go throughout the next couple of days, because soon those the evacuation orders are in place. Now, we are concerned about this. This will probably be the biggest takeaway, I think, as we go throughout this storm system. We're looking at storm surge. Look at that, up to 12 feet in some spots. Where you see that red line along the coast, that is a wall that is 12 feet tall. I'm about 5'3", so that is much taller than me, and that just moves. It's water, salt water moving over dry land, and that is very, very dangerous. I do want to do a quick look of the rest of the country because, of course, the biggest story will be Milton over the next couple of days, but we do have some rain falling in New England. Some could be heavy at times, could see some storms as well. The middle of the country looking really nice, sunny nice, lots of sunshine, feeling a little fall-like in the Great Lakes. Another big story still is the record heat. We are looking at dangerous temperatures into the triple digits. This continues to be a problem out west and in the southwest, so do want to be careful there as well. But of course, our focus will be on Milton over the next several days. So important because we have about 60 hours to go.
Yeah, only a day or two to prepare.
Yeah.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
Sure.
And as Florida prepares for the arrival of Hurricane Milton, people in North Carolina are just starting to put their lives and communities back together after Hurricane Helene devastated much of the western part of the state. Now, President Biden is ordering an additional 500 active duty troops to that area to help with the recovery efforts. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton. She is in Burnsville, North Carolina. That's about 25 miles north of Asheville, and joins us now with the latest. Good morning, Antonia. You know, Helene just 10 days ago hit there. What can you tell us about the cleanup efforts right now in the area?
Hey, Christine, you know, there is still so much work to be done here in the Burnsville area, which is a smaller, more rural community, and in Asheville, where by now everyone has seen this almost post-apocalyptic kind of scenes down by the River Arts districts and in many neighborhoods there. Look, families, business owners, locals, they've just been going out and doing a lot of the work themselves, moving trees, trying to clean debris. But this is incredibly complex work. I mean, we're talking about mudslides, massive rocks that have rolled down mountainsides, roads that have collapsed in part into bodies of water and rivers, and homes that have just floated away off of their foundations. So the level of work here, what we're hearing from residents, it's not just a matter of weeks. We're talking months before things start to feel like they're back to normal. People are still hearing that in some cases they may not have running water for weeks. So that, of course, raises the level of concern and desperation. People unable to cook their own food at home, to clean their own clothing, to start doing the cleanup with all of this mud that many people here are very worried could be toxic to them. And so people are doing the best they can. Right now, I'm at a sort of shopping center that really just the community here, they've sort of risen up and created for themselves, where people are sharing goods, they're bringing what they can, and people can come through here throughout the day to gather what they need, because that is sort of the center, is just what are the basic needs these families have right now, and then we can get to the next stages of recovery after that, Christine.
So then, Antonia, as this new week begins here, what are the priorities then for the recovery effort?
Well, it's a multi-stage, multi-agency, multi-pronged process. So the military is here in North Carolina, not only by foot on the ground, checking in on residents, but also taking to the skies in helicopters. No matter what part you really are or what area you're in Western North Carolina, you hear helicopters throughout the day. But it's really challenging. I actually got the chance to fly with the National Guard, and you get to see how difficult it is from that aerial view. So you look down, you can see there's thick woods and brush. You're looking for a place to land your helicopter, but it can be really complicated. And then sometimes the people who are coming in to give aid, they are well-meaning, but they don't know these Blue Ridge Mountains. And this is an environment that, unless you grew up here and you really understand how dangerous the terrain in some of these places can be, you might land and then become a liability yourself because you're getting stuck in the mud. There's no cell service. You don't actually know how to navigate to find some of the more remote areas. And so what we're hearing from residents here is that while they know people are trying to help them and give them support, they are also at sometimes very frustrated by that support because it is slow. And we're now 10, 11 days out here. And there are people in some of these sort of landlocked, shut off areas where roads have collapsed who are still waiting to see evidence that that support is coming. And so it's here, it's on the ground, but it is really challenging. And so it is going to take days more in some cases for some of the federal workers who have made it here and who keep arriving to actually reach some of the people who are the most in need, Christine.
Over the weekend, you reported about complaints from GOP lawmakers in Washington critical of how FEMA is handling the response to Helene. What are local officials' views of the job the agency is doing?
Yeah, I think it's important to put some of that criticism in two camps, too. So we have the legitimate concerns from locals here about the speed at which aid is reaching them. And it can feel really slow here. Again, more than a week out, and people still saying, I don't have a way to flush a toilet at home. My kids haven't had proper nutrition or food in days. We spent time talking to people right here yesterday experiencing some of that. And then there is also just an element of misinformation and rumors that have spread, both on the local level and national level. People saying that FEMA is capping their aid to families at $750. That is not true. In fact, FEMA has already approved tens of thousands of applications and millions of dollars in aid, and we expect that to increase soon, Christine.
All right, Antonia, thank you so much. A lot of work to do there. All right, today marks 1 year since the Hamas terror attack on Israel, and Israelis and Jewish people around the world will remember the more than 1,200 killed that day and the remaining hostages. The conflict created that day showed no signs of letting up anytime soon as Israel ramps up its attacks on the Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin has more.
Israel ramping up its military strikes as the region braces for its response to Iran's latest missile attack. In southern Beirut, some of the heaviest bombardments of the war as Israel targets Hezbollah and Hezbollah fires rockets into Israel, striking a building in Haifa. In northern Gaza, 300,000 Palestinians once again ordered to leave their homes as the Israelis prepare for yet another ground offensive. As Israel bombed a school and a mosque in the central part of the Strip, the Israeli military claiming both were being exploited by Hamas.
We will never stop!
In the United States, hundreds gathered for a rally in Central Park to remember over 1,000 lives lost on October 7th. Just one of several commemorations in cities around the world. Palestinians, too, in mourning and global protest for the more than 40,000 Gazans killed, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, and the growing death toll in Lebanon.
Murdered, kidnapped.
A quarter of the residents of kibbutz near Oz were either killed or kidnapped when Hamas militants stormed the border a year ago. Rita Lifshitz shows us where Carmela Dan and her granddaughter were burned alive.
They were hugging each other. That's how they found them. How come the army was not here in 8 hours?
A year later, you still don't have the answer to
something is not right.
Rita takes us to the home of her father-in-law, 84-year-old Oded Lifshitz, now kidnapped, his beloved piano burnt to ashes. She shows us where they once enjoyed the sunset together, with a view of Gaza. Now Oded is so close, yet so far.
Before talking about peace, we need our 101 hostages back home now.
All right, Erin, thank you so much for that. Today, Israelis are pausing to remember those that lost their lives 1 year ago in that large-scale terror attack by Hamas that has forever changed the Middle East. While today may be a day of commemoration, the war still goes on. This morning, Hamas fired rockets from Gaza into Israel as the IDF's air and ground offensive against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon grows. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley is in the region, joins me now from the Lebanese capital with more on this. Matt, good morning. You know, a really painful, somber anniversary of the October 7th attacks. How are Israelis and others reflecting today?
Well, obviously, this has changed the face of the entire Middle East, and Israelis are commemorating this with a series of ceremonies throughout the entire country, mostly focused on Tel Aviv, a place called Martyrs Square, which has been the site of protests for much of the past year, demanding that the hostages be released, and in some of the towns and kibbutzim around the area of the Gaza Strip. We've been seeing very solemn moments there this morning, as well as the site of the Nova Music Festival, where we saw at dawn a ceremony timed just for the moment when Hamas militants attacked that music festival, killing hundreds of people. But we're also hearing from Hezbollah and Hamas. They released statements saying that they were vindicated in their choice to engage in this fight on October 7th, and saying that they are going to continue their fight against the Israelis. So they are also mentioning and marking this day, this solemn moment, a year on. But there's also been continued violence. A year later, continued attacks by Hezbollah, firing missiles into northern Israel and from the Gaza Strip. Hamas is firing missiles, this time toward Tel Aviv. This just goes to show that a year later, there has been no real battleground solution to what started a year ago. And in fact, some of those ceremonies in Israel were even constrained by Israeli regulations against the crowding of people, against huge gatherings of people, as the Israelis decide how to retaliate against Iran, yet another new front in this war that started on October 7th. So there is a lot of commemoration, a lot of thinking, a lot of reflection, and also a lot of fighting that's still going on.
The U.S. has tried repeatedly to negotiate peace talks in the region, but Benjamin Netanyahu, he has forged ahead in his assault on Hezbollah in Lebanon. On a day like today, you know, we have the reminder of how this all began and what it has led to. Is there any discussion about a ceasefire or hostage exchange or any kind of diplomatic movement today?
Well, the Israelis have essentially backed away from any suggestion of a ceasefire, both with Hamas in the Gaza Strip and with Hezbollah here. And in fact, as I mentioned just a moment ago, they're now preparing a retaliation against Iran that threatens to escalate this regional war even more. So actually, there was a great article that was published in the New York Times today by some of my colleagues there that discussed how the Israelis and Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, had essentially agreed to a deal that could have halted the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah here in Lebanon for 3 weeks, but instead backed away under pressure from Netanyahu's right-wing ministers. So and then also on top of that, we saw that there was an effort to try to create some sort of peace in the Gaza Strip. There was a lot of movement there, and then the Israelis went ahead and killed Ismail Haniyeh, which actually started a lot of the fighting with Iran. And now they've killed Hassan Nasrallah, who was about to agree to a deal to end the fighting here in Lebanon.
All right, Matt Bradley, thank you so much. Let's bring in Avi Meir. He's the former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, and he joins us now to give some perspective on this anniversary. Good morning, somber morning. It's been a year since the October 7th attack. Can you give us a sense of what the mood of the country is like today?
Well, Christine, I remember the September 11th attack. I was a high school senior in the D.C. area. I remember the trauma of that day, but how once the day was over, we were able to start healing as a nation. The challenge here in Israel is that the trauma is still ongoing. There's still 101 hostages in Gaza whose fate is unknown. There's still tens of thousands of Israeli families that have been displaced from their homes and have no sense of whether they will ever see their homes ever again. There are thousands upon thousands of families that are grappling with loss, with the deaths of loved ones, with injuries, traumatic injuries, emotional injuries of a variety of kinds. And so this is a country that is still very much admired of the trauma of that day, and we don't know exactly where we're going to emerge from it.
And then we have in the last year the bombardment and the ground operations in Gaza, huge loss of life there. We have seen several escalations in the conflict in recent weeks between Israel and Hezbollah. And there's still an estimated 101 hostages in Gaza. Negotiations have stalled. You know, are there Israelis who feel like the hostages have been forgotten here?
Well, there is some concern that with the escalation in recent weeks between Israel and Hezbollah, of course, Hezbollah has been bombing Israel since October the 8th, but only now has Israel started to respond, that the hostages have been left behind. And there are many voices, particularly amongst the family members of those hostages, who have said, but wait, we still have 101 human beings who are in Gaza. We don't know how many of them are still alive. We know that they're being held under deplorable conditions, being subject to all sorts of abuse. The immediate concern needs to be bringing them home. And unfortunately, it seems like those voices have been largely drowned out by the events of recent weeks.
When Iran attacked Israel with that barrage of missiles last week, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, said Iran will pay. We have yet to see what that retaliation is going to look like. But I wonder, a year in, does this whole situation get much worse before it gets better? Where's the off-ramp?
Look, the off-ramp is very simple. We need a ceasefire. We need Hamas to lay down its weapons and release those 101 remaining hostages. We need Hezbollah to stop bombarding northern Israel and let those tens of thousands of Israeli families who haven't seen their homes in a year to return to those homes. And we need Iran to stop playing such a horrific, pernicious, and toxic role across the Middle East. That is what will end this conflict. And until Israel feels that it is able to enable its citizens to return home, it'll have no choice but to continue to defend itself. And that's what we see happening right now.
Avi Mayer, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, a scare in the skies. A hero passenger forced to take the controls of an airplane after the pilot passed out. How air traffic control guided her to safety. But first, we're diving into the race for the White House. The all-out blitz with less than 1 month until Election Day next. Welcome back. We're now just a month away from Election Day, and the pace of the campaign for the White House kicking into a new gear for both presidential candidates. Former President Trump and Vice President Harris hit the trail over the weekend, now ramping up their outreach to voters in some really important battleground states. Here's NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist with the latest.
Former President Trump in battleground Wisconsin, attacking his opponent almost immediately.
But Kamala is a disastrous, radical, and grossly incompetent vice president.
Trump appealing to a crowd of thousands in a rural part of the state, encouraging them to take advantage of early voting.
If you have an absentee ballot, return it right away as soon as you can.
This stop a day after a massive rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, the same venue where a would-be assassin shot Trump in the ear and killed one of his supporters back in July.
Take over, Elon. Just take over.
Tesla and ex-CEO Elon Musk at his first Trump rally, publicly throwing his support behind the former president. Melania Trump appearing in a rare recorded interview with Fox News, sharing her views on abortion rights.
I want to decide what I want to do with my body. I don't want government in my personal business.
Adding that she and her husband have different beliefs.
He respects that, and I respect that as I let him be his own person. He has different beliefs.
Meanwhile, the Democratic presidential ticket launching a new media blitz with Vice President Harris on the popular Call Her Daddy podcast, appealing to its large female audience and responding to criticism about her not having biological children.
This is not the 1950s anymore. Families come in all kinds of shapes and forms, and they're family nonetheless.
Her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, on Fox News Sunday, defending what he's described as past misstatements.
I will own up when I misspeak. I will own up when I make a mistake.
With just 30 days until Election Day, Harris planning what a senior campaign official called a series of high-impact appearances, including 60 Minutes, The View, and a town hall on Univision.
All right, our thanks to Aaron for that report. Here for more on the race for the White House is NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, good morning. You know, as we heard from Aaron in that piece, the vice president and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, preparing what looks to be a full-scale media blitz, podcasts, talk show appearances. Is there a sense within the campaign that it's time to shake things up and I guess leave the protective bubble of rallies? What's the goal here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's certainly a desire to improve the trajectory. If you look at polling, you haven't seen much movement lately. I spoke to a campaign official last week who said the numbers aren't moving. So there is definitely a desire to make things better than they are right now, as we have had for, the entirety of this presidential election, whether it was Joe Biden or Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee. It's a very close race. It's going to be decided in about 7 states and probably just a couple of those states. So I think what you're seeing is an effort to reach more voters, certainly to both hit the base. Some of these interviews that Vice President Harris is doing are with friendly interviewers, and also to reach out a little bit beyond the traditional political realm and get some greater cultural relevance.
John, also over the weekend, we heard from Senator J.D. Vance that the former President Trump is, quote, consistent in his plans to defund Planned Parenthood if he wins the election. What has the reaction been to that? And I guess to borrow their word, has the Trump campaign found a consistent stance on abortion rights.
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, obviously, abortion has been such an explosive issue since the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe versus Wade, and that issue of Planned Parenthood, which provides health care, in a much broader sense than just abortion. Kind of goes deeper into that issue. And it's a difficult one for the Republicans because, to your point, Donald Trump has been inconsistent on abortion. At one point in 2016, he said women should be punished if they have abortions. Then after the midterm elections in 2022, he said that he believes in states banning abortion if they want to, but also with exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. He has basically been all over the map on abortion, except for being in support of abortion rights. It's just a question of how much he wants to restrict them and whether it's the state or federal level he wants to do that at.
And John, fill us in on what's to come for both candidates this week. I mean, what will their focus be now? It's crunch time right now in the race for the White House.
Yeah, absolutely, for the next several weeks. So as you mentioned before, and as Aaron reported, you've got this full-on media blitz on the Democratic side. We should also see them in sort of traditional rallies as well. Again, there's 7 states that anybody cares about. At least in terms of the presidential operations. And then Trump, he's in Florida right now, and he'll be in Pennsylvania later this week, and I believe in Wisconsin or Michigan. I'm sorry, I can't remember, Wisconsin or Michigan later this week. But also we should expect events to be added, as the week goes on.
All right, John Allen, thanks so much. Nice to see you.
Thanks. Take care.
Coming up, Florida in focus with Hurricane Milton picking up steam overnight. We're taking a look at how the Sunshine State is preparing in the wake of Hurricane Helene next. Welcome back. This morning, we're tracking Hurricane Milton in the Gulf of Mexico, which is now officially a Category 3 storm. Forecasters predict it will make landfall on Wednesday in or near Pinellas County, Florida. That includes the Tampa Bay metro area. It comes as people there are still recovering from Hurricane Helene, which battered the area, less than 2 weeks ago, killing at least a dozen people. Now, the county is under a state of emergency, and area schools are closed as people brace for another round of life-threatening rain and storm surge. David Connor joins me now. He is the lead public information officer for Pinellas County. David, good morning. Thank you so much for making time to join the show this morning. Your county is not getting any break here. You're now preparing for a direct hit from another major storm. It's still cleaning up from Hurricane Helene. How is the county helping people prepare, and what's the priority between now and when Milton arrives?
The biggest priority anytime we have a hurricane heading towards the county is protecting the lives of our residents. To do that, we're doing a couple things all at the same time. As of today, we've started mandatory evacuations of our assisted living facilities, nursing homes, hospitals in zones A, B, and C. So those are kind of the three zones closest to the water or the bay. We've also encouraged residents who are living in those zones to leave on their own if they want to. Today we'll also be starting transportation for our special needs residents. Those are residents who may not be able to get to a shelter by themselves, may be dependent on medical equipment to stay alive, and just need extra help to get to safety.
This hurricane could bring more than a foot of rain to parts of Florida. What's your biggest concern at the moment about the water?
Well, the biggest danger with any hurricane is storm surge. And, that's the wall of water that's pushed before a hurricane. And it's not just rain flooding. It's a very, very dangerous, fast moving, kind of insurmountable force. And though we don't know the exact path that this storm is going to follow as it approaches the Gulf Coast of Florida, if it does hit us in the wrong place, we are forecasting up to 10 feet of storm surge, which is significantly higher than this area experienced with Hurricane Helene.
Boy, I hope people listen and heed these warnings because, hurricane fatigue can be real. People can start to tune warnings out storm after storm, especially if they feel like the last one wasn't so bad where they are. What's your message on that to residents this morning?
And we've been sending community outreach teams to impacted communities across the county for the past week. And what we're finding is that the folks who experienced firsthand the impacts of Hurricane Helene are all saying that they're planning to evacuate. That's smart. It's going to be difficult, but it's the right move for them. What I'm concerned about is the folks who did not have the water come up to their house. Maybe their neighbors or the next block over got hit. But if that happened to you, if you were near an area that got hit by the flooding, don't expect that you'll be safe this time, because there's a good chance that this is going to be all of what happened a week and a half ago, plus several more feet of flooding.
I can't imagine all the work you guys are doing right now to try to keep people safe. David Connor, Pinellas County, thank you so much for joining me this morning again. All right, it's the first Monday in October. That means the Supreme Court justices will be returning to the bench for the start of a brand new term. And on the agenda for this coming term, a full slate of hot-button topics. Some of the legal battles already brewing for the High Court involve cases over transgender rights, guns, online privacy concerns, even the death penalty. But this year could bring another set of challenges for the court, with the election now right around the corner. NBC News Supreme Court reporter Lawrence Hurley joins me now with more on that. Lawrence, good morning. Let's start with the election. The Supreme Court decides which cases it wants to take, which ones it wants to avoid. It famously got involved in the 2000 election with Bush v. Gore, but sidestepped election challenges in 2020. What kind of cases involving the elections do you think the court could hear?
Morning, Christine. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to keep in mind. One is how close the election actually is, because if it goes one way or the other and it's pretty clear who the winner is, none of these legal issues necessarily are going to decide the election in a way that Bush v. Gore did. But if it's a close election and if it comes down to one state, like it did in 2000, if it's in Pennsylvania or Georgia or some other state like that, then there could be some legal issues, some of which are already brewing in lower courts, that could lead to the Supreme Court getting involved, whether it's about ballots being challenged and whether or not they can be counted, about mail-in ballots or ballots that require signatures or dates or something like that. Some sort of discrepancy like that the court might have to step in on. That's the type of case that could end up being pretty decisive.
Yeah. Republicans to this day, Lawrence, continue to question the integrity of the 2020 election. Some Republicans. Is there any indication of how the court might handle false claims like the ones we've seen pushed by the former president and others this November?
Yeah, I mean, we have pretty good evidence of that because of what happened in 2020. There were dozens of these lawsuits that were filed by President Trump and his allies, and they all failed. They were lacking in merit. They were thrown out pretty quickly by the courts. And some of those did reach the Supreme Court, including a post-election case that was filed by the state of Texas, basically on behalf of Trump. And the court pretty summarily got rid of that. So I think there's some reason to believe that the Supreme Court's not going to pay much attention to these more outlandish claims. But the question is whether within those outlandish claims there's a real legal issue, and that's the type of thing that the court might be interested in.
What are some of the most closely watched cases on the argument calendar for this term?
So as you mentioned already, the gender-affirming care for transgender teens is a major case. Hasn't been scheduled yet, but it's probably going to be heard before Christmas. And that case is a challenge by the Biden administration to state laws that have banned or restricted care for transgender teens. Obviously quite a contentious issue. And that's one of those cases actually that could be affected by the election as well in a different way, because if Trump wins the election, that's the type of case that might go away because the Trump administration might not want to challenge those laws. And then there's a couple of other interesting cases, including this week, a challenge to the Biden administration's ban on ghost gun kits, which are these gun kits you can get online that are untraceable, that the Biden administration is trying to ban and has been challenged. And that's another big gun case. They've had quite a few of those in the last couple of years, and that's one to keep an eye on as well.
Some Supreme Court terms are more memorable than others. Looking at the docket, does this seem like a year with a lot of high-stakes cases?
Well, I mean, if we talked this time last year, I would have said maybe last term wasn't going to be a big term because we didn't have too many cases at that point, but things can change pretty quickly. Last term, we ended up with the big Trump cases about whether he could be prosecuted, whether he had immunity. We had cases about January 6th. We had 2 abortion cases, and none of those were on the calendar this time last year. So especially if there's a change in administration, and we can all remember when President Trump got elected last time, he issued a lot of executive orders that got challenged in court, including the travel ban. And if he does stuff like that on his first few days in office, those cases could quickly get up to the Supreme Court in time to be decided this term.
That's right. All right. Lawrence Hurley, thank you so much. Nice to see you.
Thanks a lot.
Coming up, are hospitals ready for cyber attacks? We go inside one medical center preparing for the new high-tech threats next. Welcome back. It's hard to forget that CrowdStrike global IT outage that happened over the summer. Patients and healthcare systems nationwide were put at risk. NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro has more on how one Philadelphia hospital is gearing up to make sure they're ready the next time its tech is compromised.
A widespread IT outage is affecting major companies around the world.
This outage has been wreaking havoc on hospitals.
This was probably the biggest event that I've seen of this magnitude in my career.
For John Donahue, Vice President of Corporate Information Services at Penn Medicine in Philadelphia.
Hospitals, that's going to take weeks to recover from that.
July 19th was a day he'll never forget.
I got the first phone call about 1:30 in the morning on Friday, and my first thought, this can't be true. This is some prank.
Passengers on Delta flight. From airports to hospitals, a software update from cybersecurity company CrowdStrike crashed computer systems around the globe.
Initially, this looked like a cyber attack.
It did.
Though it wasn't a cyber attack, for many hospitals, it was their first time experiencing what one could be like.
It required a physical touch at every file server and every device, close to 60,000 devices in total.
And doctors and nurses were thrown into new territory.
We couldn't access anything on the computers.
Nurses like Melissa Jew resorting to pen and paper to write down patient information.
The CrowdStrike incident forced many medical procedures here at Penn Medicine to come to a complete standstill, but some potentially life-saving treatments couldn't wait.
Dr. Allison Lauren was scheduled to conduct a bone marrow harvest that day.
In one word, what was that day like for you? Scary.
Ultimately pulling it off with paper records, cell phones, and trust in her team. Kevin Mahoney, CEO of the University of Pennsylvania Health System, says this was a wake-up call.
The healthcare system is not prepared for these enormous cyber attacks.
In 2023, the FBI says 249 ransomware attacks targeted healthcare institutions across the country. And earlier this year, Ascension, one of the nation's largest healthcare systems, made headlines after they experienced a cyber attack.
It's being demonstrated here.
Penn Medicine now finding ways to protect themselves from potential attacks.
So what we have here is a threat map, and this shows us globally what's happening from a cyber perspective. So this map is another cyber attack map that we use to spot trends. It's focused on spam volume and malware volume.
Is this something you use daily?
Our cyber team would use this daily.
Getting ready now to prevent a catastrophe in the future. Valerie Castro, NBC News, Philadelphia.
All right, let's get to what's making financial headlines this morning. Boeing and its largest union are hoping to make a deal once contract discussions pick back up today. CNBC's Bertha Coombs joins us now with more on that and more money news. Good morning, Bertha.
Hey, good morning, Christine. Looks like we're going to have a lower open in the markets this morning after that better than expected jobs report last Friday, which helped the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P all lead to a fourth straight weekly gain. A singing Joker hits a wrong note with moviegoers. Warner Brothers' Joker, Folie à Deux, taking in just $40 million at the box office in its opening weekend, according to Comscore. That's short of already modest projections that it would gross between 50 and 60 million. The movie is a sequel to the 2019 hit Joker, which opened with nearly $100 million and went on to top $1 billion worldwide. This is the latest box office flop for Warner Brothers Discovery, which also suffered a blow when it lost the NBA to Amazon and NBC. I'm not sure if I have the right script here, but let me tell you what's going on with Boeing. Boeing. Boeing and its union are going back to the table to discuss their contract. There's been a strike there for 3 weeks. 33,000 of its workers at West have walked off the job, and that has delayed Boeing's construction of all of its major airliners, the 777, the 767, and the 737 MAX. So the hope is that them getting back to the table will help bring them closer to finally getting a new contract. This is a tough time for Boeing. It's burning through a lot of cash. It also has a lot of issues with regard to the possibility of seeing a downgrade on its debt rating, Christine, which you know would then make it that much harder for them because it'll be that much more expensive for them to raise cash. So the fact that we saw some progress with the port strike, maybe we'll see some progress in Boeing as well.
Yeah, certainly a lot of labor momentum in the past year or so. It'll be interesting to see what that means for Boeing. Bertha Coombs, thank you so much. A short flight turned into a harrowing fright when the pilot of a small plane became incapacitated. Thankfully, one heroic passenger was able to help divert disaster, stepping in and taking control. NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin has that incredible story.
Miracle in the air.
Are you with me?
Yes, I am.
An air traffic controller talking an inexperienced passenger through piloting a twin-engine aircraft when the pilot lost consciousness midair.
Okay, so make sure you add a little bit of power.
What was supposed to be a flight from Las Vegas to the Central Coast turned into an all-hands-on-deck operation to get the plane safely on the ground. Look, this animation shows the plane taking off near Las Vegas, Nevada Friday morning. Its final destination, Monterey, California. But the plane was diverted nearly 100 miles southeast to Meadowsfield in Bakersfield, California. But the journey there was harrowing.
Are you able to add power so our airspeed doesn't get too low?
Yes, 132.
Okay, that's absolutely perfect.
At the airfield, Ron Brewster, the Kern County Director of Airports, and his team were standing by.
We were able to get fire, ambulance, and everybody on standby. So as the aircraft came to a stop, they were getting medical attention within seconds.
Thanks to a team of aviation experts and this calm air traffic controller,
your airspeed is looking good from here.
The passenger safely landed.
Confirmed aircraft secure, one patient cardiac arrest.
But unfortunately, the ordeal has a tragic ending.
He was pronounced deceased at the hospital.
As for the brave woman at the controls.
How is she?
Dealing with a tragedy, so she's doing the best she can based on the circumstances.
Just incredible. Our thanks to Dana Griffin for that report. Coming up, goalpost down, the book-busting upset that shocked the world of college football and the epic celebration that ended up in the Cumberland River. We'll explain after the break.
Me? A princess? Shut up!
All right, Princess Diaries 3 is in the works at Disney. Shut up. Her Royal Highness Mia Thermopolis is returning to Genovia. Actress Anne Hathaway confirmed the news by posting that iconic scene from the 2001 classic on Instagram. The franchise left off with Princess Diaries 2, The Royal Engagement, which came out just 20 years ago. Adele Lim, known for her work on comedies like Crazy Rich Asians and Joyride, is set to direct the next installment. Hathaway will, of course, reprise her role as the unsuspecting royal, but the jury is still out whether the incomparable Julie Andrews will make an appearance. We don't have details on a release date just yet, but Hathaway and her royal subjects say the announcement is proof that miracles happen. 20 years ago for the sequel. All right. And finally, at this hour, it was perhaps one of the biggest upsets in college football history. Over the weekend, Nashville's Vanderbilt took down one of the top powerhouse schools in the country, top-ranked Alabama. And as some of the players told NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson, that moment was life-changing. Here's more.
The astonishing college football upset everyone's talking about. Vanderbilt superfans crying, then storming the field Saturday in the team's first victory over Alabama in 40 years. The unranked underdog taking down the top seed.
Look at this. Games like this change your life.
The party spilling over into the streets of Nashville. thousands marching through Music City, carrying the goalpost some 3 miles down Broadway before dumping it into the Cumberland River.
In the river! Vanderbilt wins!
Calling that game, Joe Deo, announcer by night, insurance worker by day, and a long-suffering Vandy fan relishing this moment.
What was it like to say those words when Vanderbilt finally, after all these decades, beat Alabama?
It felt to me in the moment to be historic, and it felt just fun and crazy. It was just great.
The Commodores' home turf win over the Crimson Tide, extra special as Tennessee recovers from the aftermath of Hurricane Helene.
What do you think it means for Tennessee to have a moment like this to come together around?
I think a lot of people are weary across our city, across our state, and across our country. But this was a chance to do something fun for just a little bit, give people a little rest, a little hope.
Our thanks to Hallie Jackson for bringing us that story. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now. The news continues right now. And good morning. I'm Christine Romans in for Joe and Savannah. Right now on Morning News Now, we're tracking Hurricane Milton as it slowly moves across the Gulf of Mexico this morning. Our Michelle Grossman has the storm's latest path as Florida, already battered by Helene, braces for impact later this week. A somber day of remembrance as the world marks 1 year since the October 7th attacks on Israel. Overnight, the Israeli army carrying out a fresh round of strikes in Lebanon's capital of Beirut. And in Gaza, fears loom over what appears to be a major new offensive. People in the north ordered to evacuate by Israel. We have team coverage as the families of those remaining hostages demand action. In the race for the White House this morning, a battleground blitz kicking into high gear with less than a month to go until Election Day. Former President Trump bringing out billionaire Elon Musk at a campaign rally at the site where he survived an assassination attempt in July. Meanwhile, Vice President Harris ramping up her attacks on Mr. Trump's record on abortion over the weekend. We're covering it all. We might only be at the front door of fall, but for some big retailers, it's never too early to start thinking about the holiday shopping season. Later in the hour, we're digging into the best steals and deals hitting shelves this week so you can get a head start on your loved ones' lists. But we begin this morning with Hurricane Milton, the Category 3 storm currently barreling toward Florida's central west coast. Florida's governor has declared states of emergency now in 51 counties. The storm is expected to make landfall on Wednesday near the Tampa Bay metro area. Residents racing to stock up on essentials like groceries and gas. While several evacuation orders are set to get underway today, the governor even saying that highway shoulders will be temporarily open to allow more traffic through. This all comes as officials work double time, not only to help residents prepare for Milton, but also to continue cleaning up debris from Hurricane Helene, which battered the state less than 2 weeks ago. NBC News national climate reporter Chase Kane live in Orlando, Florida, which is currently in Milton's direct path. Chase, good morning. Orlando, further inland than the other cities in Milton's path, but officials there are still concerned. What's their biggest concern?
The biggest concern here is inland flooding, just like what they saw with Hurricane Ian a couple years ago, where they got more than a foot of rain in some places, triggering flash flooding. Here with Milton, they're expecting they could get 8 or 10 inches of rain, so maybe not quite as bad as Ian, but still a lot of concern about the impact of flash flooding and the impact of power outages with branches and power lines coming down, as we are expected to get Category 1 strength winds here in Orlando, Christine.
So what's being done to help residents there prepare?
Well, yeah, you can probably see here behind me a big pile of sand. Folks have been out here early at the crack of dawn this morning filling up sandbags. Some folks live in neighborhoods that were flooded during Ian. Others say, it's really just a matter of me being prepared. I don't want to be caught off guard. If the winds and the rain is coming in at just the right angle, it can push water into people's homes, in their front door, in their back door. And so folks are doing this very difficult work of scooping up and filling these heavy sandbags to try and get prepared, because they've only got about a day and a half.
Yeah, and if Hurricane Milton continues on its current path, it's going to be just the third storm in nearly 175 years to form in the Gulf of Mexico and then hit Florida. Why is that significant, and how could it affect the storm's impact?
I mean, the real concern is you're basically giving this hurricane maximum runway across those super warm Gulf waters. But the difference between then, those hurricanes in the late 1800s, and this one is that because of climate change, our atmosphere is warmer. Those Gulf waters are much warmer. They're record warm in some cases. So you're just giving that hurricane more time, more runway to strengthen, to intensify, to collect more water, which because of climate change, we know these hurricanes can dump more rain, and they can dump that rain even more quickly. Again, just underscoring the importance of what these folks are doing here in Central Florida. Christine.
All right, Chase, thank you so much for bringing it to us. Now let's turn to Lieutenant Danny Alvarez from Florida's Hillsborough County Fire Rescue. Lieutenant Alvarez, good morning. You're just not getting much relief here. You're now prepping for another major storm, still recovering from the last one, Hurricane Helene. What extra steps have been taken to make sure that emergency teams are ready?
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. We are in the county. We are doing our very best to, we're facing an issue with the debris from the previous storm. So we are exhausting all our resources trying to pick up all that debris. We're going to be in the process of opening up shelters for those that are in need. I'm anticipating an order come out sometime today. And, you know, we are coordinating as far as the fire rescue side of things. We went through this just 12 days ago, so we are ready. We know what we need to do. So fire rescue, and I anticipate Hillsborough County in general, we'll be ready for the storm.
So picking up all that debris is the top priority between now and Milton's landfall. You know, I see those pictures of the piles of stuff. Where do you put all that stuff? Because if it's out there in those high winds, it's all potentially very, very dangerous projectiles.
Exactly right. That's one of our main concerns. Under 20 miles an hour, like you said, those are projectiles that could definitely impact and damage homes and cause further damage. So we do have different sites, transfer sites, where we're able to dump anywhere from yard waste to just construction debris. You know, so we're working on that. We're asking the community if you have means to also help a neighbor out and transfer that. We're saying all hands on deck, but we're doing our very best, and the county is, like I said, exhausting every resource to try to remove all the debris possible before the storm hits.
The governor urged people to evacuate sooner rather than later. In a press conference last night, he told them not to underestimate this storm. What's your biggest concern right now?
Well, our biggest concern is we're still recovering from the previous storm, and to couple that with potential flooding, wind damage, with Hurricane Milton. I don't think our area has seen something like this. So we are preparing for as far as fire rescue, we are preparing for the worst. We are, just in the last hurricane, we had over 500 rescues, water rescues, and we are anticipating a similar number. So, you know, we're telling everyone, if you live in low-lying areas, we have 5 different evacuation zones, and we're anticipating the A and B, which are the first 2, to go ahead and start preparing for a potential evacuation.
You know, Florida, no stranger to major hurricanes, of course, which sometimes can lead people to not taking warnings as seriously. Right. Just use this moment what's your message to residents this morning? Why is this different today?
Well, I know the Bay Area has, generally speaking, this is a year routine where we try to prepare for storms. A lot of times, or recent history, we've been very lucky, haven't been directly impacted, but we had a wake-up call just 2 weeks ago. So I believe everyone's going to take this storm seriously. It's already a strong storm with the potential of increasing in strength. So have a plan in place. That's the message. Prepare if you're in low-lying areas. Have a plan to evacuate. Our top priority is your safety. So things could be replaced. Obviously, life cannot. So please be safe is our message.
All right. Good luck to you, Lieutenant Danny Alvarez. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us this morning.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, now let's get to the latest on Milton and where it's headed. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman is here with an update. Michelle, good morning again.
Good morning, Christine. Yeah, we have about 60 hours before we see that landfall happen along the west coast of Florida. Let's talk about comparing it to Helene, because so fresh in our mind, as Lieutenant Alvarez just said, we're still dealing with the destruction, and we will be dealing with the destruction for days to come. So what's similar to Helene? Well, it will be a major hurricane when it makes landfall on Wednesday. We're going to see destructive winds, historic winds. We're going to see historic storm surge as well. We're going to see a wall of water up to 15 feet in some spots, 12 feet in some spots, damaging winds well inland from the coast. So it's going to make its way right over the state of Florida. Let's talk about what's different. Well, the inland flood threat is much lower. So remember with Helene, we saw it move on shore and then moved into portions of the Carolinas. We had the mountains that kind of enhanced that rainfall. Tropical moisture still, we're going to see that, but we're not going to see the threat so far inland. Milton does not move north, stays south of Georgia, so we're not going to see it move over those same places. It will move back out into the Atlantic. The damaging storm surge will occur over a significantly smaller area. Helene was a very large storm in terms of its size. This is a big storm, but in terms of its size, it's a powerful storm. In terms of its size, it will be smaller. So let's talk about the latest, because we continue to see Milton kind of overachieving, strengthening. So up to 120 miles per hour winds. We're still seeing a Category 3 storm. That was as of 7 o'clock this morning. We're going to see it move to the southeast at 8 miles per hour. So it's moving relatively slow, and we do expect it to slow down a bit. Earlier models showing that the landfall was around 7, 8 o'clock on Wednesday. We're now seeing it slow down a bit, so it might be later Wednesday into early Thursday, but we still have time to see that track change. So for today, what we're seeing is the outer bands of Milton bring some rain to portions of the Yucatan Peninsula. We have a frontal boundary that's draped over the state of Florida, so we're seeing some rain, not necessarily associated yet. Some of these bands could reach Florida, but the heavier rain today is due to a frontal boundary with some waves moving across it. It's kind of tapping into that tropical moisture. So we are saturated already. That's going to continue tomorrow on Tuesday. Later Tuesday is really when we're going to see the effects or the impacts of those rain bands from Milton, and then Wednesday is that landfall. So for tomorrow, Milton continues to strengthen as it crosses the Gulf. Remember, Chase sort of mentioned this earlier. We are dealing with very warm waters, bath waters. That is the fuel that the storm needs. It's not really encountering shear, so all the ingredients are there for that continued strengthening. We'll see the increase in winds, the storm surge, also in the rain as well. By Wednesday, this is where we're expecting the landfall. This is where we're going to expect those high impacts in terms of rainfall, flooding rains up to 15 inches in some spots. We're looking at that wall of water 12 feet or higher, and also looking at the winds 100 miles per hour. So that storm will cross the peninsula, and then it will move back out over the Atlantic. What it does over that, we'll have to see, but it looks like now it's going to continue to move over the Atlantic. Here is the path. Notice by early Tuesday, we're looking at 155 mile per hour winds, and then it weakens a bit, but still a major hurricane as it makes landfall somewhere along the west coast of Florida. It looks like the central part of the west coast of Florida. So near Tampa, north of Fort Myers. Again, this is not set in stone. This is going to move a little bit to the north, a little bit to the south, and we're going to continue to watch that for you. We have tropical alerts in place. These were put up about 5 o'clock this morning. We're going to see them expand as we go throughout the next couple of days, but still we have hurricane watches. That is in the pink for places like Tampa, Fort Myers. We have a tropical storm watch in that orange yellow color. Places like Tallahassee, also Key West, could under these alerts. And again, we will see these expand over the next 24, 48 hours. Now, in terms of the storm surge impact, this is the biggest takeaway. I think this will be the biggest takeaway when it comes to Milton. And the deadliest part of a tropical system is the storm surge with drowning. So we're looking at the red area here, up to 12 feet in some spots, 5 to 10 in others. And then it gets a little bit less as you head to the north, a little bit less as you head to the south. But this is a serious situation, and this is why evacuation orders are put in place. Let's talk about storm surge. What exactly happens? Well, we have those powerful winds that push the water up against the coast. So we have that salt water that is really kind of just pushed, it's shoved onto the coast. And the water piles up, it raises the ocean above the normal height of the tide. So it goes over the fresh water, or the land, and that's where you see that wall of water. It's very disturbing. destructive to any homes. You don't want to be in those areas. And water is very, very powerful. So it's going to continue to rise as it moves up and onto land. A very dangerous situation. And that's what really caused a lot of issues with Helene as well, in addition to that freshwater flooding. So we're looking at the potential for 5 to 10 inches of rain. Couldn't see up to 15. And then in terms of the winds, we have up to 100 miles per hour. Again, a lot of debris is out there from the past storm. So this is a really serious situation. We need to take it seriously, and we need to, prepare over the next 60 hours.
Historic and dangerous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for bringing us all that.
Yeah.
All right, as Florida braces for yet another hurricane, we're taking a look at a new study this morning that shows human-driven climate change could be making these storms stronger and more destructive. It comes as nearly 280,000 people still don't have power across Georgia and the Carolinas, more than 11 days after Hurricane Helene made landfall. In North Carolina, officials say it could be weeks before people get running water again. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch has more on the recovery efforts.
Tucked away deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains, Asheville, North Carolina was considered a little slice of paradise. Some called it a climate haven, suggesting it was immune to extreme weather. But last week, that paradise turned out to be an illusion.
Oh my God.
Helene battering the area for days, ripping apart homes, washing out roads, toppling trees, and cutting off entire towns.
It looks like a movie. It doesn't even look real. It looks like somebody took the road, it looks like Play-Doh, and just threw it to the sides. The damage is astronomical.
And while Helene made landfall in Florida, its path of destruction stretched hundreds of miles across the southeast.
This is an historic hurricane.
New research out this week says there is strong evidence human-driven climate change strengthened Helene's destructive power. One study saying it made the storm's rainfall up to 20% heavier and its winds 7% stronger.
We're seeing these events that are boosted by climate change, stronger, wetter, lasting longer.
Another report found that a warmer climate led to 50% more rain over parts of the Carolinas and Georgia than would have been expected. These wetter, more powerful storms wreaking havoc in areas not used to getting them. Asheville residents in particular say they were caught off guard.
We weren't prepared for the severity of the storm.
Whether you live in the mountains, whether you live in Duluth, you are not immune to seeing an extreme weather event that has been made worse by the influence of climate change.
To add insult to injury, only about 2% of residences in the hardest hit counties were protected by flood insurance. And a paper published in the journal Nature this week laid out the hidden toll of these storms, arguing that on average, the true death toll from a tropical system resulted in an additional 7,000 to 11,000 deaths over the 15 years that followed. Why? According to the study's authors, factors like financial distress, medical care interruption, and loss of critical infrastructure contributed to a kind of delayed mortality effect in the years after the storm.
Our study really highlights that hurricanes and tropical storms are a much greater public health burden than anybody had previously thought.
Back in Asheville, residents know it will be a long road to recovery.
We have no running water. We're living off of water bottles and generators, and the city of Asheville is saying the water is going to be maybe weeks, maybe months before they have the situation back up and running.
As Helene's long-term impact slowly comes into focus.
Thanks to Jesse for that report. It has been 1 year since the Hamas terror attack on Israel, but the conflict in the Middle East shows no sign of letting up anytime soon. Israel has intensified its bombardment of Gaza and southern Lebanon amid the anniversary, hitting the Lebanese capital with a new round of airstrikes late yesterday in a widening war with Iran-backed militant groups in the region. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel joins us now from southern Lebanon with the very latest. Richard, good morning.
Good morning. So much has changed since that morning 1 year ago today when Hamas militants broke out of Gaza and carried out their massacre, killing more than 1,200 people, taking hostages, 101 of them still held captive in Gaza. And now war is spreading all across the Middle East with that intensifying war in Gaza. It is not over by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, there's a new offensive underway in northern Gaza. And here in Lebanon, the war is also intensifying. intensifying. Even this morning, we've been seeing Israeli airstrikes in the city of Tyre, where I am right now, on that hill behind me. So the war is spreading across the Middle East, and of course, the world is waiting, bracing to see how Israel will respond after Iran's missile barrage.
This morning, Israelis commemorated the moment a year ago when several thousand Hamas gunmen broke out of Gaza and went on a killing and kidnapping rampage across southern Israel. Israel was blindsided and struggled to respond to the Hamas attacks in more than 30 locations. It took hours to send reinforcements and days to repel the assault. It was Israel's 9/11. Now Israel is at war, reducing Gaza to rubble, with more than 41,000 killed, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Israel this weekend launched a new offensive in northern Gaza, claiming Hamas has regrouped. And in Lebanon, an air and ground war is intensifying against Hezbollah. But the group is still able to launch rockets, overnight hitting the Israeli city of Haifa. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to Israeli troops on the Lebanese border. A year ago, we suffered a terrible blow. In the past 12 months, we are changing the reality from end to end, he said. Netanyahu has never accepted responsibility for the October 7th intelligence and security failings and says an inquiry will come after the war. Danny Yatom is a former director of the Mossad.
How much responsibility do you think Prime Minister Netanyahu bears?
He is responsible because he got some early warning, even though it was not the exact date, the exact location, but it was an early warning. And he did not pay attention to it the way the Prime Minister should pay attention to it.
And this morning, Hamas said it fired rockets toward Tel Aviv. There are no reports of casualties.
Over the past year, Israel has reestablished its military deterrence and proven its intelligence capabilities, but critics say that Prime Minister Netanyahu has launched a series of war without a clear plan on how they end.
All right, Richard, thank you so much for your important work over the past year. You can hear more of this important reporting from Richard Engel and Yalda Hakim in the podcast The World. New episodes every Wednesday. All right, 1 year after the Hamas terror attack on Israel, Israelis remain enraged and deeply shaken. Families of hostages are still fighting to bring their loved ones home as Israel continues to carry out one of the most intensive bombing campaigns in history. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us now with more on this. Raf?
Hey there. 1 year ago today, the October 7th terror attack began right here at the site of the Nova Music Festival. There were some 3,000 young people here. This was a place of music, a place of joy. And then around 6:29 a.m., Hamas gunmen coming from all sides. Around 350 people were killed. And this site is now a vast memorial. Their names, their faces, their stories remembered here. Early this morning, at sunrise, there was a memorial ceremony. It was attended by Israel's President Isaac Herzog, and they played the last track that festival goers heard on October 7th before the music stopped and the shooting started. Now, we have been hearing shooting all day here. The sounds of outgoing Israeli artillery heading into Gaza just 2 miles from here. We've seen Israeli helicopter gunships opening fire. There are no memorial ceremonies in Gaza today. This is just another day of Palestinian families trying to survive as this multi-front war drags on. 41,000 people killed in Gaza, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, around 17,000 of them children. And of course, it isn't just the people killed here who are being remembered. It is also the hostages. There were some 40 people from this festival who were kidnapped. 1 year on, almost unbelievably, around half of them are still in Hamas captivity inside of Gaza. And so this is not a place, that is the sound of outgoing Israeli artillery. This is not a place where old pain is remembered. This is fresh grief felt every single day. The fact that there are still some 101 hostages inside of Gaza is an open wound in Israeli society, and one that won't heal until those people are back home with their loved ones. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Raf, thank you for that. All right, the parents of one of those hostages joins us now on set. Ronan and Orna Nutra have been working nonstop for the release of their son, 22-year-old Omer. He's a soldier in the Israeli Defense Force who was born here in New York, grew up on Long Island. Good morning to both of you.
Morning.
It has been, Ronan, I can only imagine a year of nightmares and anxiety. What are you feeling today on this, I guess, grim anniversary?
No, we just can't believe that we're still fighting for the release of our son and 100 more hostages, among them children, elderly, 5 women. It's unbelievable that we're still in the same spot and that our leadership, both here and on the other side of the ocean, can't get their act together and bring a deal to a closure.
The scale of the tragedy is almost unimaginable. Just tell me about Omer. What kind of a guy is he? You know, so people can understand, you know, who he is.
You know, Omer is this big, tall guy, 6'2", big smile on his face. He's very social. He's the guy that will break the ice. You know, on the one hand, he's this goofball, very lighthearted. On the other hand, you know, he's the kind of guy that will do the right thing, that will make sure, you know, if any group he walks into, he'll see the people that are on the outskirts and he'll bring them in to the center of things. He sees people. He's really a connector.
A young man, but an adult, you know, 22 years old. You say he'll be 23 soon.
Yes, the last time I spoke with him was on October 6, 2023. This was a week before his 22nd birthday, and it's just unbelievable that, you know, he's turning 23 next week.
You have met both with President Biden and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, right? And you have really been pushing for de-escalation. What do you want to see in this conflict here to get your boy home?
We want to make sure that the leadership is doing everything they can. We keep on hearing that there are obstacles, but those obstacles can be reached and an agreement must be signed. And we're looking for brave leadership that we don't see right now, that are willing to take tough decisions, bring a ceasefire, and the whole de-escalation of the whole area by bringing the hostages back. It's time. It's a year.
You know, this is a terrorist organization that we're dealing with. There's no good deal with a terrorist organization, but the worst enemy of a good deal is a better deal. And we've been told by the whole military apparatus in Israel, this is months ago, that the military achievements have been great and it's the time to get them out. And we know that their conditions are just being worsened by the day.
The conditions have materialized to the point where a deal must be signed. Yeah, so we're pushing everybody to bring it on.
We've heard from people who've left those tunnels just how difficult it is there. Both of you were in the midst of the high Jewish holidays. You posted a prayer for Rosh Hashanah, for peace and better days. You said, hang on to hope. Where does that hope come for both of you?
Well, first and foremost, it comes from, you know, the notion that we feel that our son is alive and is waiting to be saved, and we really have to fight for him to get him back. And we get hope from acts of kindness from people around us. It's been a silver lining in this horrible, horrendous year that we've been going through. So many people have reached out and have showed humanity in this time where that is lacking.
There are 7 Americans that are still kept in captivity among the 101. There are 20-some nations in those hostages. It's a humanitarian condition. It's a global crisis. And when we spoke to President Biden, he was trying to instill hope in us. We want to make sure that our leaders are doing everything, and actions are needed now to bring the hostages back. They're dying down there.
I just pray for you, for your own strength and strength for your son to endure here. 365 days. It's hard to believe it's been a year. Thank you so much. So nice to meet you, Orna and Ronan Nutra. Thank you. Right now, let's go to the race for the White House, with the election coming up just 4 weeks from tomorrow. After a busy weekend for both campaigns, former President Trump and Vice President Harris are campaigning heavily in battleground states as the vice president launches a new media blitz Here's NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson with the latest.
Hey there, good morning to you. Both candidates later today are set to mark 1 year since the October 7th terror attack in Israel, before turning their attention later in the week to the campaign trail with a range of appearances hoping to reach voters and viewers.
Election Day officially less than a month away this morning, and amping up the attacks, former President Trump in battleground Wisconsin.
Kamala is a disastrous, radical, and grossly incompetent vice president.
Mr. Trump, Saturday, back in Butler, Pennsylvania, the scene of the first assassination attempt against him, picking up his speech where he left off in July.
As I was saying,
and touting the endorsement of billionaire Elon Musk. The Harris-Walz team, for its part, kicking their media messaging into higher gear with broadcasts and podcasts, many with friendly interviewers, though Walz appeared on Fox News. On 60 Minutes, Harris pressed on the U.S. relationship with the Israeli prime minister.
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
And with popular podcast host Alex Cooper taking aim at former President Trump's record on restricting abortion access, and asked about comments from Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders that her children keep her humble, drawing an apparent contrast with Harris, who has stepchildren.
I don't think she understands that there are a whole lot of women out here who, one, are not aspiring to be humble. Two, a whole lot of women out here who have a lot of love in their life. This is not the 1950s anymore. Families come in all kinds of shapes and forms.
And Alex Cooper says she also invited Mr. Trump onto her podcast. We've asked his campaign for comment. As for Harris, one of the Democratic Party's heaviest hitters, former President Barack Obama, will rally for her starting Thursday in battleground Pennsylvania. Back to you.
All right, Hallie, thank you. Much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including a shocking new report detailing the sharp rise in anti-Semitic incidents here in America in the 1 year since the October 7th attack. But first, after the break, some scary moments for passengers on one Frontier Airlines flight over the weekend. Flames caught on camera shooting out of the plane as it landed. What authorities are now focusing their investigation on next. All right, we're back now with the latest on a mysterious mid-air scare and fiery landing at the airport in Las Vegas. This video shows a Frontier flight with a trail of flames as it touches down on the tarmac Saturday. The FAA is saying it all started when pilots reported smoke in the cockpit mid-flight. NBC's Maggie Vespa has the details.
A dramatic scene on a Las Vegas runway.
We had an emergency on runway 26 left.
Cell phone video capturing flames and black smoke billowing from underneath Frontier Airlines Flight 1326 in from San Diego Saturday. Airport officials saying it made a hard emergency landing. Moments later, terrified passengers spotting smoke outside their window.
It's putting out a fire on our plane.
Now, the NTSB and FAA trying to unravel this mysterious incident, which may have begun in the air. Investigators saying the flight crew made that emergency landing after reporting smoke in the cockpit. Radio traffic indicates while approaching the runway, the crew went silent.
We have no communication with the pilot whatsoever. His radios are out. We have no communication with the pilot.
You could see the wings just going like this.
Passengers Lucas Shook and Alondra Soto say on descent, the plane dropped multiple times.
It's just like if you just were sitting down in a chair and you drop, 5 feet down. We landed and it was so hard, I felt it through my body.
On the ground, they saw smoke.
I told her, I think it's on fire.
Alondra, when you realize that your plane is smoking and then on fire, what goes through your mind?
I was very scared.
Once evacuated by firefighters, the couple says they saw all 4 of the plane's tires were blown out. Frontier saying the cause of the incident is currently under investigation.
This is a very serious situation.
Jeff Gazzetti, a former FAA accident investigator, says authorities will be zeroing in on whether that mid-air smoke in the cockpit was caused by the same fire seen on the ground or a different issue entirely.
This crew had a very serious emergency going on with smoke in the cockpit that degraded their ability to communicate with air traffic control.
As for Shook and Soto,
Do you feel differently about flying again down the road?
I think I would be like
Absolutely.
a little scared.
Maggie, we know these federal investigations can take a long time. How are the passengers doing in the meantime, and what's Frontier doing to help them?
Yeah, Christine, no surprise. The passengers are really shaken up. A couple that we talked to actually said that landing was so violent. Both of them, their backs are still sore. And they also said Saturday night, so just hours after this flight happened, they got an email from Frontier offering each of them a $200 voucher for a future flight, but they had to use it, the email said, within the next 3 months. And that really frustrated them. They felt like this was a life or death scenario, and they said they didn't feel like nearly enough compensation. So we reached out to Frontier, and they clarified. They said in addition to that voucher, all customers on that flight will get an auto refund, but it may take 7 to 10 days. Christine.
Yeah, refund at the very least. Okay, Maggie Vespa, thank you so much. Now for a look at what's making international headlines. The Netherlands is making a high-priced investment in Ukraine. NBC international correspondent Claudio Lavanga joining us now with Rome with more on that story and a lot more. Good morning, Claudio.
Good morning, Christine. That's right. The Dutch Prime Minister paid a surprise visit to Kyiv in Ukraine and pledged to invest more than $400 million into the development of advanced drones technology. Now, Ruben Brekelmans also promised to deliver more F-16 jet fighters in the coming months. While in Kyiv, he said that the focus will be on different types of drones, both surveillance and defensive, but also attack drones needed to target Russian military facilities. He also said that half of the investment will be spent in the Netherlands, while the rest will be split between Ukraine and other countries. Let's move now to Thailand, where 2 elephants were killed and about 100 more were evacuated after flash floods swept through an elephant sanctuary there. A video shared by the Elephant Nature Park in the north of Thailand showed dozens of elephants making their way through belly-deep water, accompanied by staff directing them to higher ground. Despite the effort by the staff, at least 2 elephants, one of them blind, died in the flood. 2 others are missing, and 13 were still trapped in their quarters on Sunday. And let's end this tour of the world off the coast of Samoa, where a New Zealand Navy ship sunk on Sunday, creating a potential environmental disaster. Authorities in New Zealand said the ship, which is a specialist dive and hydrographic vessel, lost power and ran aground on Saturday while conducting a reef survey off the coast of the Samoan island of Upolu. Authorities say this is the first unintentional sinking of a New Zealand naval vessel since the Second World War, and that an inquiry has been opened into what happened. Back to you, Christine.
All right, Claudio, thank you so much. Coming up, a closer look at the alarming rise in anti-Semitism here in America. After the break, we'll dig into a new report that finds reports of anti-Semitic incidents have more than tripled in the year since the October 7th attacks. This is Morning News Now. One year on from the October 7th attack, a new report has found a sharp rise in anti-Semitism here in the U.S. According to the latest figures, there's been an increase of more than 200% in reports of anti-Semitic incidents from October 7th, 2023 to September 2024 compared to the same period a year ago. Joining us now for more on this is Oren Siegel. He is the vice president of the ADL Center on Extremism, who ran these figures. Oren, good morning. So this report shows that there have been more than 10,000 of these incidents reported in the U.S. over the past year. Walk us through the numbers. Where are you seeing the greatest increases in anti-Semitism?
Sure. And let me just start by saying, as we mark 1 year since the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, it's really important that we take a moment to note the over 1,200 lives lost and recognize that there are still hostages being held captive. You know, at the same time that ongoing barrage of rockets and attacks are happening in Israel, we've seen a significant surge since October 7th of anti-Semitism in the United States. The 10,000, and these are preliminary numbers of incidents that we have tracked around the country, include over 8,000 incidents of harassment. nearly 2,000 incidents of vandalism, and perhaps most disturbingly, over 150 assaults. And this is just what we have right now. The numbers keep coming into our offices around the country, and we suspect that at the end of the day, this one-year period will be even higher than what we have just reported.
Or, according to this report, thousands of these incidents took place during, quote, anti-Israel rallies. What sort of examples stood out to you?
Unfortunately, literally on the next day after the massacre, we started seeing blatant support for Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and others talking about how the resistance, the massacre of October 7th was justified. And so immediately, the sort of providing rhetorical support to terrorist organizations that are hell-bent on targeting not just Israelis, but Jews around the world was a common feature at these rallies. So were, by the way, incidents targeting Jewish or Israeli or perceived to be Jewish or Israeli-owned restaurants and institutions, basically ascribing blame for the ongoing conflict to anybody, regardless of what they felt about the conflict, simply because they were Jewish. That's classic anti-Semitism.
There was also a record number of anti-Semitic incidents reported in the year 2023. Is this part of a larger trend? And do you believe these numbers will continue to spike?
Listen, 2023 was by far the most incidents we recorded year over year. And in part, it was because of the surge of incidents that we described post-October 7th. What we have put out over the last couple of days in terms of our data looks at just from October 7th to about September 24th. So in that one-year period, over 10,000 incidents. We've never seen anything like it. Frankly, there's no comparison to the level of anti-Semitism that has made the Jewish community feel vulnerable over the last year.
What's to be done to bring the numbers down?
Well, first, we have to stop normalizing anti-Semitism, whether it's in our public discussion. We have to make sure that people reject violent forms of anti-Semitism instead of lauding them on college campuses and at protests. We have to make sure that our social media doesn't amplify and provide disinformation that we know animates this type of activity. Frankly, this is not a trend that we are reporting on. This is a crisis.
Oren Siegel, thank you so much for bringing us those numbers.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, 'tis the season. After the break, the leaves just might be turning those shades of orange and yellow. Hey, but that doesn't mean you can't already snag some details, some savings for the holidays. We're going to bring you the big retailers that are giving you the best bang for your buck starting, this week. That's next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. Even if you're one of those people who is still excited that pumpkin spice is back in your favorite coffee shop, it's never too early to get prepared for the holiday shopping season. In fact, a quarter of holiday shoppers have already begun shopping. Half are expected to begin shopping before Halloween. And if you're looking to get a head start, retailers like Amazon, Target, and Best Buy are rolling out early deals this week. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of excuses to spend your money. And luckily, we have NBC News senior consumer investigation and News Now anchor Vicki Wynn here to help us. Okay, so this is a big shopping week in early October.
It is so good to be with you. And yes, it is. The holiday creep is officially here. It officially starts in October. Those retailers want to get into your wallet early and often. But here's the thing, as you say, Christine, if you've got a budget, you stick to the list. It can be helpful for consumers because we can spread out our spending. Yeah. So Target Circle Week already underway. That is for members. It is free to sign up, thousands of deals. You're looking specifically at household essentials. I think this is a really good deal. You buy $50, you get $15 in a gift card to use in the future. This one got me yesterday. Spend $40, get $10 off on toys. We got some of those mini Squishmallows for this advent calendar, and these things are selling out. So those are the things you should be paying attention to. We'll go to Amazon Prime Big Deal Days because that's really who kicked off all of this. That starts the 8th and 9th, and we're looking at Halloween accessories starting at $5, but also big brands, Barbie, Clinique, Lego, Samsung. Those will all be on sale. And travel deals, Christine. Really? I know you're not thinking about experiences, but up to 40% off of Carnival cruises, 20% off of Avis car rentals. Walmart also not wanting to be left out. This is the first year they're doing their sale online and in stores. Online, it starts tomorrow, the 8th, and then, excuse me, Wednesday is when you can shop online. Look for beauty. That's actually something you can buy right now, up to 60% off, up to 40% off clothes and toys. I would wait when it comes to clothing, footwear, and the big electronics like televisions and gaming consoles. You will get better deals on Black Friday. Wait on those. Small things, the e-readers, the tablets, those can be purchased right now.
So that makes the most sense. What kinds of products make the most sense to buy now?
Yeah, exactly. So it's those smaller personal electronics. Okay. But the thing you want to do when it comes to discounting and making the most, getting the most bang for your buck, layering the discounts. Not just for clothes, layering is for sales as well. Cashback apps. Rakuten has this huge event happening right now through Wednesday. It's called the Big Stack event. So you have to get the app or install the browser extension. And all it means is, Christine, if you're trying to buy something from Lululemon or Nike, you're going to go to Rakuten first. Okay. And then you're going to shop through that website or through that app. Samsung, Therabody, Verizon. 10% cash back. They literally send you something called the big fat check. So it's really, really simple. The experience is exactly the same. You can check Capital One savings, Retail Me Not, as well as Upside. Those are all other cashback apps. But the Big Stack event, that's going on today through Wednesday.
And those browser extensions can be really, really helpful.
Easy, super easy too.
You don't have to do any work. It finds all the deals for you. So all these upcoming sales, it's kind of hard to predict the perfect time to buy something. Do I get the AirPods now? Do I wait until Black Friday? We've got this new thing, a holiday price check that our team has put together. Tell me about it.
I'm very excited about it. You were there in the meeting. I said, you know what I don't understand is these days we've got sales starting in July. Then we got October, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, the last minute deal right before Christmas. When do I need to buy the thing to get it for the best price? So that's exactly what we're doing. We're making the data sexy for you. We're crunching the numbers. Take, for example, the TCL 65-inch 4K TV. That's a very popular model. So we found that in July of this year, it was going for $699. As of yesterday, $1099. That's a $400 price difference. Guess what? This morning, back down to $699. Ahead of Prime Big Deal Days. Here's what we found, though. Last year, if you look historically at the last year model, Black Friday, it went another $50 below. Even better than those Super Bowl savings in February. So the best time to buy that TV, most likely going to be Black Friday. And so this is what we're doing for you across toys, across shoes, all the different categories of things that people want to buy for the holidays. So you can check that out on NBC News.
You have a hot take that I really agree with where, you know, it can be a little crazy to be buying for the holidays this whole time. But you're right. If you can spread out the savings over a couple of months, then you're not slammed and get credit card debt at the end.
Exactly. So, Nobody wants that big bill in January.
Vicki, nice to see you.
Yeah.
All right, more money news now, starting with a big AI upgrade that could soon be coming to the iPhone 16. CNBC's Bertha Coombs joins me now with more on that and some other dollar-saving headlines. Good morning again, Bertha.
Hey, good morning, Christine. The iPhone 16 may get the first Apple Intelligence features later this month. Bloomberg reporting that some AI tools will roll out with the iOS 18 software update on October 28th. These will include notification summaries, improvements to Siri, such as understanding you better when you mumble or stumble over your words, along with writing tools. You'll still have to wait for the top-tier features until next year, which include Siri being able to carry out tasks across multiple apps. Meantime, mining giant Rio Tinto confirming it is in talks to buy Arcadium Lithium, which reports saying a deal could be worth up to $6 billion. Arcadium, which is based in Philadelphia, has operations and mines in North and South America, and a customer base that includes Tesla, BMW, and General Motors. If a deal happens, it would make Rio Tinto one of the world's largest lithium producers as it drives to supply the metal that is essential for the global shift to clean energy and electric vehicles. And Krispy Kreme is scaring up Ghostbusters-themed donuts ahead of Halloween and the 40th anniversary of the original movie. Starting today, you can grab the donuts individually or as a collection in a custom specialty box that looks like the traps the Ghostbusters used to trap spirits and ghouls. Among your choices are a donut made to look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, which is one of the characters. You can also get a new Ghostbusters-themed drink, Slimer's Slimeade, it's called, which is a signature ectoplasm green. Now, I drink a green smoothie, but I don't know if I want a Slimeade drink.
I mean, I'm not sure, but, you know, the kids will love it. Bertha, thank you so much. Nice to see you.
I guess so.
Coming up, we're taking you inside the game with who else? The one and only D-O-double-G, Snoop Dogg. The rapper took last night's Steelers-Cowboys matchup by storm for NBC's Sunday Night Football. And our own Kaylee Hartung was right alongside him on the sidelines. So we got that for you next. Welcome back. It's been a busy year for the one and only Snoop Dogg. The hip-hop legend cheered on Team USA in Paris for the Summer Olympics. And on Sunday, he was in Pittsburgh to wave the terrible towel as his beloved Steelers took on the Dallas Cowboys. And our own Kaylee Hartung got to tag along for the ride.
Hey.
What's up, baby?
I'm Kaylee. How are
you?
you?
What's happening with you? Can I follow your lead?
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Snoop Dogg is a hip-hop icon known for his California roots. But he's been a Pittsburgh Steelers fan since he could first hold a football.
Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. Oh, you see that no smoking sign? That's where they lost me.
How does a kid from Long Beach, California become a Pittsburgh Steelers fan?
Well, in the 70s, you got to understand there was only so many teams that was really dominating, and the Steelers was one of those teams that represented what I felt like, and it just felt like a team that I could get behind, and I never stopped loving them.
Another team he's behind? Team USA. Snoop Dogg is fresh off a wildly successful stint as commentator and Team USA superfan at the Paris Olympics. What was the highlight of Paris for you?
Probably the highlight of Paris was the torch. To be able to represent peace in that moment, that meant the world to me.
And now he's been passed another torch in the form of Pittsburgh's infamous terrible towels. I'm gonna need you to teach me the proper towel etiquette.
Spin it.
Okay.
Spin it, spin it, spin it. There you go. Yeah, you got it. You got it. You got it. You're already in there. You didn't need no lesson.
There's a big game coming up here. Christmas Day, you welcome the Chiefs. If Taylor Swift's here to watch her man, you gonna invite her to watch it with you?
No, that ain't happening.
Battle lines are drawn.
Yeah, they already know what it is. When it comes to Steeler game, it's us or nobody. We don't side with nobody.
Well, let's get this cup filled up.
Yeah, let's fill it up.
Get hyped for game time.
Fill her up, baby.
Woo! Snoop hit the field for some pregame action.
Honey, I am home. They take care of business. Yeah. This just in case they want to put me in the game.
Yeah.
In case Mike T say, Snoop Dogg. Wide receiver, 6'4", 175. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Could have went to any university he wanted to, but he just didn't have time.
And even one of the most famous rappers in the world couldn't help being a kid again.
Snoop Doggy.
If Pickens isn't available tonight, you're ready to go?
I am fully loaded.
But first, Snoop needed to load up with some more Steelers gear in the team store. The fans were more than happy to assist.
This is it? I love this right here. I'm on business to keep booming in here.
You did some damage in there.
No, I didn't. I just went in there looking, and then all of a sudden it started looking good. Once I knew it was on the Steelers tab, I really had a good time.
It was almost game time, and the fans were calling his name.
Who you rooting for? I gotta switch teams, man. Watch this. He is now a Steelers fan. So says Snoop Dogg.
Snoop had to get in position for the biggest honor for any Steelers fan, to lead the stadium's terrible towel twirl before kickoff.
What does it mean to this crowd to whip that towel around?
It symbolizes unity. It symbolizes what we're about, you know, the Steel City. It's been a part of our culture since we've been doing this.
Okay, you ready? This crowd needs you. This crowd needs you.
I got something special for them. I got something big I'm gonna do.
That's called a tease in the biz.
Yeah, a little tease, a little something, something, something.
And soon, 70,000 Steelers fans were on their feet, twirling their towels in unison with America's top dog.
Kaylee Hartung, thank you. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.